let's start the show. Before I begin, this video was originally a collaboration between myself and former Channel Awesome creator Bargain Boy. As a result of the not so awesome controversy, we shelved the review. However, I couldn't let the work that we did go to waste. I called him up and got his permission. So 4 years later, here we are. Without further ado, let's hit the ground running. Here's my review of Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is the soft reboot to 2008's Mirror's Edge. It was developed by DICE, published by Electronic Arts, and hit shelves in June 2016. In Mirror's Edge Catalyst, you play the role of Faith, a free runner who was locked away in juvie for reasons not explained in the game. Yet EA mentions in the loading screen that you can find out why by buying the graphic novel Mirror's Edge Exordium. It is from that point, right from the get-go, that I realized Mirror's Edge Catalyst is going to be a perfect case study in how not to tell a story. So Faith gets let out, and upon being transferred back into the city, she's immediately broken free and is soon back to her group of renegade parkour enthusiasts moonlighting as UPS. Down with corporate oppression! Oh, and can you deliver this parcel to Rachel from accounting? I'd use the normal postal service, but then everybody in the office would know I like her. We'll talk more about the story, but first, let's talk about the real reason people care about this franchise: the free running. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is better than its predecessor by leaps and bounds. Yes, the pun was intentional, and no, I'm not sorry. Long gone are the days where the 6-axis controller mistakes your moves. It's all button presses. Not only is there added precision to its mechanics, but it also has a lot of new features that contribute to the experience. You get little things like the ability to fire grappling lines onto surfaces and use them to swing across impossible gaps. Not to mention pulling down objects blocking your path and even firing out EMPs to disable fans and stun opponents. In the previous game, you could pick up firearms, but I personally didn't like it because it slowed down gameplay. Mirror's Edge Catalyst gives you more choices that help you maintain momentum. Speaking of choice, Mirror's Edge Catalyst gives you the illusion of being in a sandbox environment, however, it still comes across as incredibly linear. Granted, with story missions, it's kind of hard to pull that off, but even the main hub where you are doesn't really feel like you're fully in control. Whether breaking down doors or vaulting from rooftops, it feels like choice is but an illusion. Speaking of the environment, the graphics are amazing! No, seriously. The moment where Faith first looks out into the distance and the camera reveals the rest of the city is absolutely breathtaking. As someone who didn't like the comic bookish art style of the first Mirror's Edge, Catalyst is a fantastic improvement. And now that we've talked about some pretty good things, it's time to focus on the bad. Electronic Arts! I'm not even joking. Mirror's Edge Catalyst does a lot of things right, and everything that went wrong honestly feels like a decision EA did. For example, not including the reason why Faith is in juvie. Also, trying to get players to sign up for online features that don't impact the game. Obviously, this is an attempt to create an online community which frankly doesn't exist. I remember watching a documentary by the YouTube channel Gamers on Mirror's Edge Catalyst. That's Gamers with a V instead of an A. According to their work, they mentioned how DICE was told by EA that they had to essentially make something that evolved the formula. That turned into DICE creating an open world and wanting to implement side quests, which are practically just a footnote. I think that's actually the moral to this review, and game in general. EA has absolutely no clue what their fanbase wants. Long gone are the days of mid-2000s powerhouses like EA Sports Vic, and titles like Def Jam, Marvel Nemesis, and good Need for Speed games. There's a reason why EA has won Worst Company in America back-to-back from 2012 to 2013. They haven't gotten better. Everything else has just gotten much, much worse. Who would have thought Ubisoft, Rockstar, Take-Two Interactive, and CD Projekt Red would drop the ball so badly? What I'm trying to say is that EA's decisions about where they want to take Mirror's Edge does not fit with the type of game they already have. There are so many unanswered questions going into Catalyst, and rather than just showing it, they hawk a graphic novel. It's incredibly apparent that the plan was to turn Mirror's Edge Catalyst into a multi-game franchise, but in order to do that, you need to sell a complete experience. Start with a good foundation, and once you've done that, set up an overarching story. For example, the John Wick and Sly Cooper franchises pull this off very well. Frankly, I should just be lucky EA isn't selling us levels and saying it's an episodic game. You know what's the best thing about that reference? Is the moment EA actually does make an episodic game, I'm going to lose my shit. I also went out and bought the art book for Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Published by Dark Horse Books, the 200-page art book contains more story in it than the entire game. According to the book, the City of Glass exists on the continent of Cascadia, a beautiful city where you must be employed in order to live there. Those who don't work are cast out into a barren, lawless wasteland where survivability is incredibly slim. The more wealthy and higher caste members of society live in higher, more upstanding buildings, eventually hoping to live in the Sky City district. Breaking this down to the bare essentials, the society is essentially a mashing of the social movement allegory of Alita Battle Angel with the unstable, lawless Long Walk of Judge Dredd. DICE had the plan to turn the City of Glass itself into a character. Not just a level, but a living, breathing city to lose yourself in. The problem with that is when the only thing you can do is run and fight, you can't really lose yourself in the world. You'll get bored and eventually want to do something else. Frankly speaking, you could speedrun Mirror's Edge Catalyst in less than a day, and quite honestly, you will have missed absolutely nothing compared to those who took their time with it. So let's dissect the story and understand why Mirror's Edge Catalyst flopped, and what it could have done instead to make a more cohesive experience. So ladies and gents, it's time to really start dissecting what prevents Mirror's Edge Catalyst from becoming a great game. The story is goddamn awful. As a player, you're probably going to be distracted by the amazing minimalistic level design, but when you actually break it down, the story is the most cliché, uninteresting, and unimaginative piece of garbage I've ever experienced. How do you mess that up? Here's how. Also, I'm going to assume that you've already played the game, or at least are uninterested in spoilers. But in the event you want to play and experience Mirror's Edge Catalyst, skip ahead to this time code. The story is so predictable, I saw all the plot points from miles away. I almost didn't really think that they were going to go with them. When it was revealed that my predictions were correct, it didn't make me feel smart for being right. It made me feel disappointed that I could easily see through something so transparent. Practically anyone who played the original Mirror's Edge would know Isabel Kruger is secretly Faith's long-lost sister Caitlin, aka Kat. Now let's talk about Noah. Noah is essentially Faith's mentor/father figure, which means something horrible is going to happen to him. While it's a tried and true cliche, I have a much bigger problem with the fact that there is no screen time given to develop the relationship between Faith and Noah. When the hideout got raided, I didn't really care. You need to properly pace the story, otherwise the emotional buildup won't land. When you attempt to break Noah out of captivity later in the game only to have him killed off, it's frustrating because there's no payoff for him. If you're going to kill him off, give us more reason to actually care. Icarus is a poorly written character who keeps abruptly changing dynamics, so much so that I got story whiplash. When I first met Icarus, I got flashbacks to Jackknife from the previous games. Both were loud, flashy, arrogant dicks, so I just assumed Icarus was going to betray us at some point. I was thinking that he sold out the runner's location to Krugersec, which would have been cliche, but when it didn't pan out, I was very confused. At that point, when he abruptly switches, I was thinking, well, maybe he'll start becoming more likable and he'll break down some walls that make him more vulnerable and sympathetic, but the game doesn't do that. So when he's trying to act all chummy at the end, it doesn't make any sense. It's awkward and seems forced. Icarus isn't a person or a character. He's a poorly written stand-in who someone forgot to flesh out, only because this game needs to have a rival character archetype. So much of this game's pacing and characters are forced on the player. Let's compare this story in the original Mirror's Edge. Your sister was framed for murder, and you had to clear her name. Simple enough premise to follow. In this game though, you have so many different characters with different goals and motivations that aren't fleshed out. Most of the time, the player is just dragged along. Do not question this story, just enjoy this story where corporate exploitation is evil and yet is unironically created by a game company who is one of the worst offenders in the industry for exploitation of labor. I don't even know what accent that was, but I'm keeping it. It's staying in. The strongest character, weirdly enough, was Dogen, who is essentially a local crime boss who Faith is in debt to. Dogen managed to be intimidating, but strangely tender in a way. All of his scenes where he prods at Faith, finally causing her to break down, and wound up acting more like a father figure to her than the guy they actually put to be a father figure. Other than that, all these characters are archetypes. I think, to be honest, the game focused on all the wrong things. Instead of fleshing out the world and creating a better story, the game included a bunch of time trials and fetch quests. Instead of making a cohesive narrative with a beginning, middle, and end, we got a hack job where the prologue requires you to buy a book and the end is sequel bait. Electronic Arts didn't know their fanbase, didn't know what Mirror's Edge was supposed to be, and sure as hell doesn't know what they're doing now. I mean, they didn't even use Lisa Miskovsky's Still Alive, which was the theme song of the previous game. This may not seem like a big issue as the others, but anyone who's ever played the original Mirror's Edge knows that song was a staple of the game. While Solar Fields attempted to incorporate minimalism in the soundtrack, they still needed to make a big theme song in order to tie everything together. As a result of their overindulgence in minimalism, they ended up creating a soundtrack that altogether was as forgettable as background noise. Although, I will mention my own musical intro for these videos is a result of me trying to play Solar Fields' track Catalyst, used in the ending credits by memory. So in the end, you find out Faith's parents accidentally created a microchip that when installed in a human can allow Krugersek to kill them remotely. Faith, distraught over the death of Noah, runs off to Krugersek and tries to prevent her parents' legacy. By the time she gets to the office and installs a virus to destroy the program, Gabriel Kruger arrives with 2 heavy-duty guards, which then turns this into a 2-on-1 fight. The fight is easily won by launching yourself off of a rail and dive-bombing the enemies repeatedly. After the fight, Kruger mentions how he should have killed Faith along with her parents. At this time, the virus uploads and Faith's sister Kat runs out of the room. Cue a brief building-to-building chase where you're treated to a cutscene of Faith and Kat fighting on a collapsed helipad. The helipad somehow knocks Gabriel Kruger out of his helicopter and forces Kat to run to try to save him. Faith escapes the helipad just as it crumbles and stares off into the distance as a helicopter containing Kat flies off. Kruger apparently fell to his death, but we don't really see it, so who the f*** knows? Kat is now in charge of Krugersek. Society doesn't care since they didn't take the red pill, and Faith gets a tattoo of the symbol Dogen was holding hostage onto her arm. I have so much rage in my veins, I can barely contain it. This ending is awful. The choices involved in this ending are half-baked, and there's no real sense of closure to justify how Mirror's Edge Catalyst went down this road. But you know what? It's one thing to just bitch about a review. It's another to actually give criticism and suggestions to make a better product. It's easier to destroy rather than create, after all. While watching the end credits, I came up with a better ending. One which makes this a good standalone game and ties up everything in a nice little bow. Technically, you can call it fanfiction, but I consider it more of a story pitch. This is just the ending I rewrote, so all the questionable choices leading to it are still in play. First things first, ditch the 2 armored guards. You need one person who is going to be an intimidating foe that justifies being an end boss. They would have to be someone who is Faith's equal, but holds emotional weight to the end fight, which is why I recommend having Faith and Kat go toe-to-toe in what is basically a game of cat and mouse style combat. Maybe make it so that the fight requires you having to use different methods of taking her down, where the same doesn't work twice. It would also have to be in a bigger area than the small cramped quarters the game used. After a long fight where both sisters run themselves ragged, Gabriel Kruger shows up. Pistol in hand and frustrated, Kat couldn't finish off Faith. Have him use the previous line where he wishes he could have finished the sisters off alongside their parents. Kat, who realizes her adopted father is the reason for her biological parents' demise, teams up with Faith, grabbing Kruger and flipping him over the guardrail, where he plummets to his demise off camera and exits the scene. At this point, the 2 sisters are surrounded by armed Krugersek guards, and it looks like their demise is in sight. Faith and Kat are backed up against the very same guardrail they used on Kruger, and in one instance, Faith looks over at Kat and poses a question. Do you trust me? Kat, who is at the very end of her rope, takes Faith's hand and goes, always. Faith and Kat fall backwards, a literal leap of faith over the guardrail and appearing like they're ending their life on their terms. Only, surprise. There appears to be a rappel point that Faith's mag rope can attach to. Faith and Kat could swing onto the damaged helipad from the previous ending. Since Faith is holding on to Kat, the landing is botched because of the excess weight on the line. This could cause Faith to sprain her ankle on the approach. Faith, now hobbled, has to rely on her sister for physical support as the helipad is starting to collapse. This could be used as a possible metaphor for Faith no longer having to keep her guard up and possibly accepting the trust of others. The two escape out of a maintenance or sewer passageway and come out on a beach where they sit awaiting rescue while watching the sunrise. Faith rests her head on her sister's shoulder and smiles, knowing she destroyed Reflection and gained back her long-lost sister. You could maybe show Faith going through rehab on her ankle, getting her tattoo, and then working together with her crew, now featuring her sister, and planning on bringing the fight to those who control the City of Glass. That's a lot better than what we got. And it's the ending that makes the story have a satisfying conclusion as a standalone game while leaving the potential for a sequel. Even if you don't kill off Gabriel Kruger, the battle to take back the City of Glass is far from over. Practically anyone could be the villain in the next installment as a result of poor storytelling. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is an incredible disappointment. While its art design and fluid controls are a major attraction, its story is paint by numbers and its gameplay isn't compelling enough to keep you coming back for more. It's a game for a niche audience that failed trying to broaden its fanbase. The special edition version, which lacks a physical game disc, is a time capsule for corporate greed. The marketing for the game proves that even MatPat can't polish a turd that isn't related to Five Nights at Freddy's. So all in all, Mirror's Edge Catalyst had glimpses of something great, but stumbled out of the gate and couldn't stick the landing. If Mirror's Edge is ever attempted again, I hope it would be with a studio who can do it justice, by people who honestly and truly want to make it more than just a paycheck. I'm SonicMTD, and I'm tired of running. This video was proudly supported by Unsung Heroes of Patreon. Hey everybody, Matthew Tyler DeLeo, better known as SonicMTD, saying thank you so much for catching my one-shot episode on Mirror's Edge Catalyst and how to completely fail at storytelling. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe and leave me a comment in the comments down below. Regardless of what you say, I always give my comments a good once-over, and if there's anything that I could use to possibly make better videos, I would love to hear from you. If you look up here on this side of the webpage, it's probably going to be whatever YouTube recommends that you want to watch, and down here is going to be a playlist of either my main series, Always Rate Reviews, or of my other one-shot episodes. So if this is the first time that you are hearing and seeing me, maybe you want to check that out. But either way, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. My name is Matthew Tyler DeLeo, better known as SonicMTD. Arigato gozaimasu, and later days.